In the news this week, a CEO and a church sue a multi-million-pound trust over religious discrimination. The NHS suspends referrals for puberty blockers after a High Court ruling. And a pastor explains why keeping church buildings open for public worship is so vital. Hello. Scotland's largest independent charitable trust is being sued by its former CEO and a church in separate legal actions supported by the Christian Institute. Stirling Free Church agreed to rent premises owned by the Robertson Trust for its Sunday services, but had its contract torn up when the trust's chairwoman discovered they don't endorse same-sex marriage. Shonag McPherson is reported to have been incandescent with anger and said anyone but the Free Church. The trust says the agreement should not have been made, claiming its policy prevents rentals for activities promoting religion, but the church's lawyers say no such policy exists. Kenneth Ferguson, an elder of the church and CEO of the trust for 9 years, was blamed. The trust began disciplinary action against him, despite Ferguson declaring his links to the church and taking no part in the negotiations. While the trust grew substantially under his leadership and he received glowing appraisals, Ferguson was dismissed, with the trust citing vague performance issues. The Christian Institute's Simon Calvert said the trust's actions suggest somebody there has a problem with people with orthodox religious beliefs. We hope these legal actions will secure justice for the Christians who have lost out as a result. The NHS has suspended new referrals for puberty blockers and cross-sex hormones for under 16s after the High Court ruled young people cannot consent to the treatments. Judges said it was highly unlikely children aged 13 and under could ever genuinely consent, and very doubtful 14 and 15-year-olds could. The case was brought by Kira Bell, a former patient at the NHS's Gender Identity Development Service, after she regretted being given hormone blockers as a teenager. Deputy Director at the Christian Institute, Kieran Kelly, welcomed the news as a win for common sense.
This is an eminently sensible decision from 3 very experienced High Court judges. Of course, there's all sorts of areas of life where children are well able to make decisions for themselves, but the judges here have recognised that in the case of puberty-blocking hormones and cross-sex hormones, that there are unknown and potentially life-changing consequences which children are going to find very, very difficult to understand. And let's bear in mind that some of the children being referred to the clinic in question were as young as 10. So this is a welcome victory, and it's going to make the experimentation on children through these drugs much, much harder.
The judge commissioned to review hate crime legislation in Northern Ireland has recommended major restrictions to free speech. In his report, Judge Desmond Marinan said the protection for those who disagree with same-sex marriage should be scrapped. He also proposed making transgender identity another protected characteristic without providing an additional free speech clause. The Christian Institute's Simon Calvert called its proposals draconian.
The Marinan report should worry anybody who cares about freedom of speech. At one point it says that the belief that you can change your sexual orientation is, and I quote, insulting and abusive towards homosexuality. Well, that strikes at the heart of the Christian faith, because it's a faith that requires us to repent, to change how we behave, including our sexual behaviour. The Apostle Paul wrote that the church in Corinth included believers who used to practice homosexuality. Does Lord Marinan want to make it a hate crime, to read from 1 Corinthians?
And finally, a pastor in Wales has emphasised the importance of allowing churches to remain open for corporate worship. Dave Gobbett, lead pastor at Highfields Church in Cardiff, co-wrote a letter to the Prime Minister challenging the second lockdown on church services. Speaking to BBC Wales, he explained why the freedom for Christians to meet together for public worship is so vital.
Well, really, the letter was a call to the government to remember the spiritual aspect to life. If we believe that garden centres and pubs and off-licences, supermarkets, hospitals are essential services, then local churches are surely essential services. The risk of COVID isn't the only threat that we face in our lives. The opportunity to gather publicly, weekly, and offer hope, support, and life is the most important thing we can do.
Well, that's all for this week. For regular updates and information on all of our stories, plus much more, visit our website at christian.org.uk. Until next time, goodbye.